All right, so we have a rich panel today, which is being moderated by Jacob Clemente, an amazing moderator, someone I've really loved working with. Jacob is the AI and work reporter at Charter. Charter is a media and insights company. And before Charter, Jacob has done some amazing research work at Freakonomics Radio Network, where he worked across 4 different shows. He's also worked as a research assistant for the historian Chris Miller on his book Chip War. As well as for Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter on his book, The Politics Industry. He holds a bachelor's in economics and history from Yale. He was also a Fox Fellow at Moscow State University. Really glad to have you here, Jacob. Very excited for where you take us with this panel. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. And for everyone in the audience, there's one more quick survey that you can just fill in as we get started.
Thank you, Shambhavi. It's great to be with you today. Hi, I'm Jacob Clemente. I'm a reporter at Charter covering AI and work. And as Shambhavi said, Charter is a startup media company writing about future of work topics like AI, DEI, and flexible work. Before we get started on today's panel, I'd love for all of my panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Maybe go down the line, say who you are, what you do, and then briefly talk about your current AI and work obsession. So this is one idea at the intersection of AI and work that you can't stop thinking about. Faye, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Faye. I have about 12 years of experience at high growth companies, predominantly early stage venture-backed startups. I then transitioned into venture capital where I was managing a little over 100 million assets under management and was investing in 60 startups a year. A lot of AI startups, surprise, surprise. And then 2 years ago, I actually started my own company, Almeshaan Consulting. After all of that experience, I really wanted to focus on performance management and help high growth startups excel when it comes to organizational effectiveness and managing their team's performance. AI obsession. Okay, currently my AI obsession, which I think I'll probably get a chance to talk about a lot today, is honestly AI agents. I am so excited of the shift from AI chatbots and just like prompt-based, give me what I need right now, to actual agents who can do more than just give us tasks. They can actually hit goals and accomplish things on their own autonomously.
Tim, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you very much, Jacob. My name is Tim Ringo. I'm a former senior executive at Accenture, IBM, and SAP. These days, I'm pro-tired rather than retired, and I write books, do workshops, and keynote speaking. Been doing that since just before the pandemic in 2020, and I'm working on my latest book, which is all about harnessing AI in the workplace. My obsession is twofold. One, to perfect using AI to make all my slides for me, for my keynote speeches. And two, I'm looking forward to the day, which I think is not very far away, which is everybody is going to have an AI executive assistant that they can talk to and have them do things and do things for you. So that's not too far off, but that's my obsession. Everybody will have an EA in the near future.
Joe, you want to go next?
Sure, I love the idea of an EA. That sounds brilliant. Maybe they could like come to webinars and free us up to go and do things. So my name is Joe, and I have been working in learning and development for nearly 30 years. I've worked for some really big organizations like CNN News and Bupa International, as well as all sorts of other kind of sectors and industries that I won't bore you with right now. And also what I do, I specialize in virtual and live events. This is an amazing event to be part of. It's had a great start already. And I'm editor of trainingjournal.com. It's an online workplace magazine. So it's a perfect place to go to discover more content, especially around AI and all of those challenges. And my obsession is a bit of a different one, actually. In a recent news flash on Training Journal, I published about a report saying that AI tools have added to people's workloads. 77% of employees were saying that. And half of them are saying, I don't know how to get the productivity gains that people keep telling me about with AI. So my obsession is about, well, how do we bring this kind of idea and premise together with the reality and not add too much to people's workload?
Thanks, Joe. And lastly, Kshitiz.
Hi, everybody. So it's great to be here, and thanks everybody for finding time for this session also. So to introduce myself, I'm a performance coach. The entire decade I've been helping organization, how should I keep it, like migrate from command-based leadership models to more purpose and trust-driven leadership models. So I do that with, I help organizations create frameworks which can actually scale into building, greater than humanity workplaces. So the entire decade was, I've worked with close to 500 plus organizations, and that's exactly what I do. And in terms of my AI obsession, I think learning is still where I am in this, and been implementing different type of AI agents which can actually help organizations, drill down better into the data that they generate through the performance processes, and agents which can actually interpret data more effectively in terms of what's really happening inside the organization.
Thanks everyone for that. Lots of interesting AI and work obsessions I hope we have time to go back to in the panel. Before we get started with questions, I just want to repeat the housekeeping rules that Shambhavi mentioned. If you have any questions throughout the panel, make sure you throw them in the Q&A chat, and if we have time at the end, we'll definitely get to them. Tim, we're speaking at a time where skepticism seems to be growing about whether these AI investments over the past few years are going to pay off and over what timeline. And one of the big questions hanging over that debate is how AI is going to impact the productivity of the organizations adopting it. Now, you wrote this book on solving what you call the productivity puzzle. I'm curious what role you see AI playing in solving the productivity problems of organizations today.
Sure. So when I wrote Solving the Productivity Puzzle, I actually wrote it 2018, 2019, came out 2020, just give a bit of a timeline. So it's kind of pre-pandemic, kind of AI being the forefront of what people are thinking. But I was already talking about in the book about how AI is going to do two things. One, I thought it was going to create almost no ceiling in terms of the amount of engagement and ability for people to increase their performance by using AI, both in the quality of the work, the scope of the work, the ability to do more with less. But the other side of it was an HR side. I saw and still do see, and this is the core of solving the productivity puzzle, is organizations that are high performing are those that get the right people in the right place at the right time with the right skills and the right motivation. And that's typically been quite a manual task. And I do see, and it's already coming out, we're going to see AI is going to be very good at that, which is getting right people, right place, right time, right skills, right motivation. And that's going to supercharge people's ability to not only use it for their personal productivity, but to also get them in the right place to be the most productive. And I think those are the two things I saw 2018, 2019, that I think AI is going to have a major impact. And so my follow-on book is going to be about, how do you then avoid being replaced by AI? So just to put a fine point on it, people, the only people who are going to be replaced by AI or just broadly smart technology are those that don't know how to use it, right? So it isn't going to be the AI and the smart technology that replace you. It's people who know how to use it and do it effectively. And I think that's the challenge that's coming. And that would be what my next book is about, which is getting everybody to a basic or better level of how to use it at work and in your personal life to make work more engaging, more fun, and much more productive. And those for me are kind of the three themes that when I'm looking at AI in the workplace, that's the sort of things that I think are going to have very big impacts. But so HR has a role and the individual has a role in that as well.
I'd love to double click on something you just said about how this is going to impact HR, specifically, how people work, what roles they work in, I forgot how you referred to it, but can you talk about what you're seeing in terms of organizations using AI for that purpose of making sure that the right people are in the right role at the right time?
Yeah, it's very early days, and just to put a name on it that all HR people know, it's strategic workforce planning, right? And we do it mostly as a manual process with some technology. But there's now some technology that's emerging that's going to allow the AI to kind of do the first cut of that. It's going to know your people, your workforce, what their desires are, their skills, their capabilities. And that technology is existing today. And so companies are starting to move from that more manual approach where you do it with a bit of technology and meetings and that sort of thing, and have the AI take the first cut at it. But it needs to have your information from your organization. It has to have your input. So we're at very early days on it, but it is coming. These technologies do exist. And we're going to talk about performance management in a moment, which is a big part of right people, right skills, right place. And that's where I see that sort of playing out. But yeah, it's not prevalent today. Strategic workforce planning is very much an art. I think it's soon going to be something that that it's going to be down just to the humans to interpret what it's telling us, rather than learning the art of strategic workforce planning.
Faye, I'd love to hear from you on this and hear what you're seeing in your consulting work. What are some of the most promising applications of AI for boosting productivity of high growth teams?
Yeah, I've worked with a few dozen clients over the last few years, and obviously I've invested my time as an investor. I oversaw about 300 early stage startups, and I want to say 50% were AI. So I've seen a lot of applications, but I kind of want to start with a preface that people do not like hearing, but I will repeat this time and time again. AI is not a silver bullet. It is not going to cure all of your problems. There are some things that are fundamental business problems that you need to figure out how to do, and AI is just a tool to help you get there. And so what I like to say time and time again, all of these panels, every time I talk, is figure out what your problem is. What is your problem statement? What is the business use case? And is AI the best tool to solve this problem? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not today. Maybe it will be 5 years from now. That doesn't mean it is today, right? And so figure that out yourself before you jump into like, here's what my buddy is doing, so I'm going to do it as well. So I have to give that preface before I go into examples. And I'll say this again, these are examples of clients I work with. I work with very early stage startups, high growth companies, Series A to Series C type of deal. And so the things that I've seen that work really well, one thing that I kind of like tell everybody right off the bat is everybody should probably have an AI note taker. I don't know why every single person isn't doing that. It's so fantastic from a performance lens. I think it's incredible. I think it's really cool to just be able to be in a conversation with your direct reports and not have to worry about note taking or what did I tell that person? What did I tell this person? If I could do a shameless plug, I invested in Firefly's AI, so I use them. I've been using them for 4 years. But a lot of performance management systems today also are building in their own AI features. I think every tech SaaS company right now is going to be implementing that. And so I would say figure out how to use those features. Lattice is one of my favorite performance management systems, BetterWorks, Leapsome, and Lattice, I know specifically now, they actually use AI to help managers summarize peer reviews. So if you're getting like 5, 6 peer reviews, you have to read all of that and figure out what's happening. And, now we're moving from like annual, biannual performance reviews all the way to like 12-month cycles or like continuous feedback, which is 52 conversations. How are you making sure that what you're giving them is actually equitable and makes sense for all of their performance over the timeline of the company? So I really love those features for removing bias and just helping managers save like 3 to 4 hours a week.
That was great. Thanks. So we have some interesting use cases there. So the first is note-taking apps, and the second one was performance management tools. Tim, I'm curious, is there any use cases you've seen at organizations that you're like, okay, this is a pretty interesting, this is enabling them to do maybe something new they haven't done before? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Great. I've worked in professional services firms my whole life, and writing proposals and papers for clients is very tedious. And I think that's been a tremendous time saver and value adder for both clients and for consultants. And I think particularly note-taking software, because consultants take a lot of time, taking information in. That's improved the professional services productivity tremendously.
Because Faye mentioned performance management. This is a good time to ask, how AI is going to be affecting performance management. Obviously, one of the themes of this panel. Kay, I'd love to get your perspective on this. How do you think AI is transforming traditional performance management processes, and what are the most significant changes you've seen to date?
Right. So we ourselves did build a platform for performance management. So I work with Keika, and we ourselves are an end-to-end HR management platform. And we launched our first version of our platform in 2014. And ever since then, we currently provide solution to close to 7,000 organizations around the globe. And in terms of what we have seen, in this entire journey is that, it's just one single revolution itself, and AI is, kind of contributing to the same revolution itself. And that started way much before technology happened. So, from all the different kind of goal setting methodologies which evolved from let's say MBOs to balanced scorecard to carry KPIs to OKRs. All these languages, are very difficult for the people to understand when it really goes down into the organization. The reality is that people still don't know how to write their goals more effectively, which can actually work better. So, if you look at performance management as a process, there are typically 4 major steps. One is, it always starts with goal setting, right? So where we figure out what really matters for the organization for probably, this year. Once the goal setting has happened, everybody has acknowledged, and we move forward to the tracking phase where, constructive feedbacks are required to be given every now and then, so that people can, there's that dialogue happening between people and managers, basically, where, if there are any problems, we can actually reach out to those problems before, it converts itself into a misperformance. And then eventually the third step is the reviewing process where, performance reviews are required to be done, and we have to assess, and finally the rewards and the learning part, right? So essentially the way I look at it, like AI today is gonna be, we have been building agents which sort of help in every single phase. So from goal setting, if you look at it, like, it's very easy, when you look at people writing their goals, if you actually put that goal through a GPT and you look at, what gaps are there, it can actually help you in figuring out that, there are a few other aspects to cover that you should be looking at while you're writing your goal sheets. So from writing more effective goal sheets to more effective insights in terms of, where is the problem, right, at the right time, building a culture of continuous feedback, and eventually, the reviews, more unbiased reviews. Everywhere, I think AI can actually help. Again, you need to fine tune it to really give it the perspective that you really want to operate it with. And that's something which I think that's changing because with the more powerful LLMs coming in, I think the possibilities with AI will be way more expanded eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, something on a lot of people's minds whenever you talk about bringing AI into performance management is obviously the potential risks of doing so. Faye, I'd love to talk to you about this a little bit. What do you see as the biggest risks and opportunities of using AI in performance management today?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I actually, last quarter, I interviewed 30 HR leaders to talk about this exact topic because I was curious how they feel about it, right? Sometimes I'm a very early adopter and sometimes my opinion is more extreme, right? And so I wanted to get a sense for like what people are thinking. And there's a lot of opportunities, right? Opportunity-wise, a little bit of what I said before, right? Imagine a world where we can have as much data into people's performance, right? So we can see from the start of the company, all of the feedback that they've been given in Slack, in Teams, right? Feedback that's been given, that's been tracked by your AI note taker. If the AI is able to congregate all of that information and actually give it to you and say, this person's ready for promotion, this person is, ready for that next step, they are amazing, whatever the case is, they can give you fluctuations over time. So you can see their different engagement over time. You can tell if they're a flight risk. Like all of that stuff is so cool and so exciting. But this all sounds great, right? Can't be a downside. There is a lot of risk, right? One of the things I like to say, and maybe this is a little bit blunt, but garbage in, garbage out. Like if your managers are not trained and they don't know how to give great constructive feedback, if you're not providing that information, the AI is going to take whatever you provided and that's what's going to be given to the individual, right? So best case scenario, you're given no constructive feedback and an individual gets a performance review that's absolutely glowing, and come time for their raise or their promotion, guess what? They don't get anything. And so they're disengaged, most likely they'll leave. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, this is happening to a ton of people, and now you have a culture problem. And so I think a big theme that I want to talk about today is really just understanding that AI is a tool, and people need to understand how to use that tool, not just in how to prompt, because that's all you see today, right? Here's how you write the question. No, it's not just that. It's also, when does it make sense for a human to do something versus an AI to do something? And how are you supposed to be working together? Because AI is going to get more and more sophisticated. And if we can't figure that out now, it's going to be harder and harder over time. And so I think there's a lot of risk with people honestly being lazy, not checking the AI's work, letting it do things it shouldn't be doing. And when we're talking about HR and performance and engagement, like those are very human-centric things that I think we need to be very cognizant about.
You mentioned the importance of knowing when a human should do something versus when an AI should do something. I'm curious if you have any heuristics or how you're thinking about that kind of divide, when each should do which task.
Yeah, absolutely. What I honestly think is AI should be your thought partner. I think similar to Tim, right? Everybody should have an AI executive assistant. They should help you come up with quick emails. They should help you write your reports for you, summarize things. That's totally fine. You have to always check the work, and you have to always be there face to face when it's something that's sensitive. So when it comes down to construct, it's easy to say, great job on Slack, right? But when somebody does something that you need to give them constructive feedback on, I think standard practice is you get on a phone call or you talk to them face to face and you give it to them. And so I think that's still a gray area for a lot of things currently, because now we do use Slack a lot, or we do use phone. And so some of us are remote, some of us are on different sides of the world. So it does get really difficult to find that distinction, but every company has their culture. And I think this is when it comes down to policy too.
Yeah, that risk that you talked about people not checking the outputs is really serious. There was an interesting research paper that came out last year that found that looked at BCG consultants and found that AI really improved the performance on one task, but actually worsened the performance on another task. And the reason was it got that task wrong. And when it was wrong, the consultants relied on its answer. Obviously, one other area that AI is impacting HR today is learning and development. Joe, this is an area of focus for you. How do you see AI affecting learning and development? What are you seeing in the companies you talk to?
I think there's a few main areas where it's coming in. One is in the experience of the employee in an organization, where you have things like the note takers, for example, that we mentioned in chat, some of which aren't necessarily the most reliable. And as Faye said, we have to go and check their work. But things like summarizing a meeting or a training session so that you don't have to...
Yes, I was looking to speak to the nurse for Dr. Nisius, please.
Oh, there we go, technology fail. So that you don't have to rely just on your own notes. As Tim said, his handwriting isn't very good. So it's really important that we can use technology for those things. But also people are finding them in their learning management experience systems, where maybe they have their kind of pathway set out for them for their training, for their career development. And that's becoming a lot more responsive. It's not just the kind of, hey, other people liked this course, you might like it too. It's much more responsive to the individual needs. And as Faye said, if you've got information from multiple systems coming together, that's the pinnacle of that experience. I think also the other way we can look at this, though, is how is it affecting the work within learning and development itself? So if you're in HR, training, any kind of where in that people profession. So obviously there are some productivity gains in helping us design our courses, like Tim said about his slides. And in writing kind of materials, there's loads and loads of good systems out there doing that now, which can really help take the load off of L&D so that we can become much more strategic and we can have much better quality meetings with people. I think what we have to be really careful of, though, is two things. One, that we're checking the work. And actually in an article that I've written for Training Journal, I've got loads of references, including another article I wrote about where it's saying like, hey, I asked all these questions of ChatGPT, and here's where it's all wrong, and here's where it didn't actually do the job I asked of it. So there's a link in the article there. But also, I think we need to be really kind of aware that it's not just about making courses quicker. It's about all sorts of other things that we can do as well. And that's what this panel here is discussing today and throughout the rest of the event, Jacob.
Yeah, this idea of we really need to be careful and check the output of whatever these AI systems give us, not take what they give us at face value. This is a common theme I've definitely been seeing in my reporting, and a lot of the companies I speak to, a lot of the business leaders I speak to, emphasize the importance of critical thinking as one of the core skills they're looking to hire for, train for in their employees. I'm curious, Joe, as organizations progress in their AI adoption, what are some other critical skills that you see as important? It's important that companies like develop in their existing workforces, but also hire for in their new hires.
Yeah, it's twofold. One is the tech itself. So as Faye said, it is the prompt writing, but also, as we've also said, it's everything else that goes with technology adoption and technology use, which will also include training people in how to use all of these systems, which obviously is part of our job within L&D or within HR more broadly. But beyond kind of the tech part of it, what we also really need to make sure that we focus on is what makes us human, what differentiates us from the system, from the tech. And that's all of the stuff around curiosity, creativity, synthesizing information as it's relevant to a particular context, being empathetic to other human beings. And whilst AI technology is obviously driving great roads into being able to do a lot of those different things, the unique human creative experience and expression that we have is something that we need to be able to hire for and develop in others as well. So that's a really big focus, I think, of the people profession too.
Hey, do you have anything here to add around skills that you see as critically important right now for companies to be developing in their current workforce and hiring for?
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, Joe, I love how you frame that, like creative human expression, like so beautiful. I just wrote an article that's about to be published on this topic exactly. And it's called The AI Agent and the Future of the Workforce. And so what I dive into is really the rise of the ultra generalist. So historically, we've hired for these very niche specialist roles because we wanted somebody to be really good at payroll tax. And that's the one thing they did, and they didn't do anything else. And it made sense because there was a lot of risk associated with it, right? So we wanted the experts to be in the room. And I think over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see a huge transition. I think we're seeing it a little bit now, where a lot of companies are looking for people with multiple skill sets. And interestingly enough, I think we're going to transition to really looking for these ultra generalists that can manage a lot of AI agents in the future. And so I think a lot of companies need to look for people that are naturally curious, that are problem solvers, that are excited by change. I think that's a big one because, I mean, this has been happening our entire lives, but change is going to continue to be exponential. And so people that are excited by change and willing to be flexible and learn and understand different things, I think companies are going to start looking for those jacks of all trade.
What do you think, Kshitiz?
Right. So I think I would like to add to the risk part of discussion, right? So a couple of things which I see which are typically going to be the toughest of the problems to solve in this space. It basically comes from the performance management process itself. So anybody exercising a performance management process would there are two problems. One is the mentality silos within the organization, right? So from the processes of goal settings to evaluation, you will see these mentality silos will affect the quality of goals people write. People would pursue goals in their silo, and at the end of the day, it does not really link, it does not align with the organization objective. So that's one big problem. And today the agents which organizations are designing, which they're utilizing for doing performance management, they again are operating in silos. So if you look at any department today, all of the departments would have their own agents. So the sales department will have its own set of agents that will help them do the jobs that they do. So goes with everybody. So eventually now, just like individuals were in a silo based upon where they are into the organization, our agents today are again in the same silo. So that's one critical problem to solve, where collaborative AI, I think, should be able to provide solution over a period of time. But then again, we need to tread carefully in that path. The other aspect is the biases, right? So there are so many different kind of biases that we experience in our lives, and just because we as individuals are biased, the machines that we are training, they too are biased. So we cannot rely on the analysis also today. If you put any data into data interpreter into GPT today, the analysis is all over the place. So all these are a couple of problems which I think, if given proper attention, if you keep fine tuning your GPTs or whatever agents you're using, we should be able to reach, at least minimize the effect of these problems in the performance management.
We have time, I think, for one question from the Q&A box. Tim, this has your name written all over it. How do you see AI contributing to helping organizations redesign their workflows, aiming to thrive in a context of a contracting economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the holy grail, really, which is what I think people are going to really struggle with. There's the overall point about, and we touched on this briefly, which is the key skill right now is to learn how to ask it the right questions and interpret the results. That's kind of the overarching, for me, concern. The next one comes, how do you then put it into the flow of work and make it such that it's going to create better outcomes, better productivity, more engagement. And it's kind of back to question number one, which is you're going to have to ask it the right question and see what it says. But I think getting it into workflows means there's two things. You need to understand your workforce. You need to understand what it is they do. And if they touch customers, you also need to understand the customer side of it as well. And I think it's going to be a while before we really master fully putting AI into workflows. And I do worry because I see quite a lot of technology out there that claims to do it. And I'm a bit skeptical. So that's the one bit I'm skeptical on. The other parts I'm very high on, but I think this is a great question. And unfortunately, I think one that's going to develop in coming months and years.
Do you have any advice for companies that are just starting this process of thinking about how to rework their workflows for AI?
Yeah, first thing is forget about technology, right? And that seems sort of ironic, but it's true. It's, set the technology aside, get to know the proper and most efficient workflows of your company, and that's by your workforce. That's by getting to know them and what they do, because a lot of times they know how to do it better than a machine does, but nobody's asked them, right? So it's kind of focus on that first. Then you can bring the technology in to kind of to underpin that. But the first thing is don't be using technology except maybe some note taker. That might be a good idea. But get to know your workforce, and we could spend a whole panel just on that.
That's great. I think that's all the time we have for questions. So this panel was Driving Organizational Performance Through AI. I'm Jacob Clementi. I'm a reporter at Charter. Thanks for joining, and please stay on for the next panel, which is on navigating the AI and HR terrain, ethics, regulation, and compliance. Thank you.